Poetry Center, bringing poetry to Paterson since 1980 at Passaic County Community College.
I'm very pleased to welcome Joe Weil to the Distinguished Poet Series. We'd love to have him in person, but because of the pandemic, we have to do these readings on Zoom. If anybody could translate to Zoom, it would be Joe Weil, who has a fire in him about poetry and just seems to go with his love of words and language and his belief in the comedy and grief of life. Joe is the award-winning author of, I think, 7 full lengths of books of poetry, 4 chapbooks, and a CD of songs with Vic Ruggiero, leader of the ska band, The Slackers. Weil has read on National Public Radio and PBS, and in 2008, a profile of Weil's life was done on New Jersey PBS. He is currently Associate Professor of English at Binghamton University SUNY, and his latest book of poems is The Backwards Year. All of his books are available. If you go on Amazon and type in his name, you can find his books. And I can't think of any better use of money than to buy one of Joe Weil's books. Joe Weil lives in Binghamton with his wife and 2 children, Claire and Gabriel. And I want to say of Joe Weil that his work is amazing, original, electric, and exciting. It makes you both cry and laugh, which I think is the mark of a really good poem and poet. Let's welcome Joe Weil.
Thank you. Thanks, Maria. I love Maria Gillen. I'd write it in chalk on a sidewalk if I could. So I just want to thank her, and it's great to be here. I'm going to start this reading off with some from this book, The Backwards Year, which I want to thank Ray Hammond for publishing. It's from New York Quarterly Press. And it's kind of, a lot of these poems I wrote, and they literally go backwards in time. But since I'm not going to be reading them in order, it won't matter that much. But I love rivers. And this actually happened. A river started reversing itself. It got so flooded that it started running backwards. And that's how I felt my life was in December of 2017. So here it goes. This river, too full of itself, engorged with a 40-day rain, runs in reverse, flees from the sea which might have absolved it. The ocean checks its watch and, noting the river has stood it up, retreats a mile, even 10 miles out, leaving detritus of horseshoe crabs, mollusks, driftwood, penny loafers, condoms, needles from that hospital by the bay, dolls' heads, the half-rotten corpses of gulls, and a man in a brown suit, bloated, yet still clutching a pinwheel. I take the pinwheel from his swollen fingers. The wind makes it spin. The man rises and tells me he is Joe. He's Joe and works for the government. Only he has forgotten which one it is. I show him a map of the world, which I keep at hand just in case. And he says, there it is. It's Estonia. And when he walks, the sea is in his shoes and makes a squishing noise. The pinwheel is for his daughter, Sophia, which means wisdom in Latin. He begins to cry. Perhaps she's dead. Perhaps he lost her to whatever lack of vision made him walk across 1,000 miles of sea. I say to him, call to the river. Listen, and your dead will rise. There is a shofar for all grief, all of it washed in losses, all of us washed in losses. and the spirit blows its horn. He shouts Sophia as the river runs backwards, down through the vast hills and onto the plains. The sea runs even faster to embrace it. Everything here is prodigal. All that I love has welled up and reversed its flow. So that's kind of a poem for a time in my life when I was going through a bit of a weird, because then the pandemic came. So I feel like it was a prophecy in some weird way. But that's one of the poems from this book. And I'll do another one that I think is important to me. It's a poem for my daughter, okay? And it's called, hold on, I'll find it here in the book. I'm a little clumsy, I get nervous. It's called Morning Dove. My daughter Claire was largely nonverbal, she's autistic. And she made this sound, and I suddenly realized it was the perfect mimicry of a mourning dove. So that's all you need to know about this poem, except that it's a love poem for her. This morning, my daughter Claire clung to me and wouldn't let go. Her legs wrapped around my waist and her arms pressed to my neck. I didn't mind wearing her. If I could wear Claire the rest of my life, well, then so be it. But we heard the bus up the hill, then saw it riding down, all yellow and black, putting forth its stop signs like some giant black-eyed Susan, into which my little bee climbed and was gone. The doors closing behind her, leaving me barefoot against cold sidewalk and colder lawn. The silence after she'd been swallowed up was filled with the warmth of her, freshly pulled from me, still leaving an impression, like a hat you continue to wear long after it's been fully doffed. That's when I heard them, the mourning doves, 3 perched on the telephone wires. Are they even telephone wires anymore? One still was sleeping, its tiny head dropped into its chest, but the others cooed their sad lament, as if to say, there is no end to coming and going, and either becomes the same after you've been coming and going long enough to start to feel the death in things, not of, but in. And all this coming is going, and this going is coming, and the bus is one big black-eyed Susan. And the nape of your daughter's neck escapes a final kiss as she mounts the stairs, encouraged by her aide. Goodbye, goodbye, Claire, and hiss of the hydraulic doors. And then you're here alone, feet numb, listening to the mourning doves, these subdued and well-dressed pigeons, hunted in other parts of the country to the tune of up to 70 million birds. So in demand that ideal seed their favorite is planted for the slaughter. And you wonder what's been planned for your 5-year-old daughter, who waits at the top of the stairs and at the end. At 2, she began imitating the mourning doves that cooed outside her bedroom window at dawn and at dusk. Took you a while to know she was learning their song. She mimics the mourning doves and the jays. They were the first birds in her cradle song. And now the house is empty. There's a dead chipmunk left by your cat to let you know he offers his share to the larder. The cat is better now at killing. No marks, the chipmunk almost beautiful. The song of the mourning dove is inside you. The press of your daughter still against your chest. You almost coo. Instead, you turn the chipmunk with a hoe, toss them into the shrubbery. They can dig 30-foot burrows under your house, destroy all the foundations. Good for them. The mourning dove is not a peaceful bird. Peace is a construct that a dove has come to symbolize. It's fierce at bird feeders, a bully to sparrows. When the dove drinks, it does not tilt its head, but sucks at the water, sucks at it like nectar, sips its own reflection. When it flees the scene, it makes a high tea kettle whistle with its wings, a quick flying bird. My Claire swallows deep and makes the grieving sound, the gulping coo she's heard all her life. She is nonverbal, on the spectrum. Sometimes she clings so fiercely, at others she pushes me away. She likes to drum with her hands on my head. Hurts. The dove on overcast days in light rain appears to be the color of rain, not so much transparent or translucent as the subtlest leech pussy willow gray. My daughter too is sometimes on the verge of disappearing. Rain child with a rain dove coo, a gray I wear in the brightest yellow, the black-eyed Susan of my life. This grief I can bear, because a long time ago, I learned love does not refuse the weight that plants it deep, the weight of the snow on rods of forsythia that causes the rods to bloom, and the weight of my daughter so tight against my chest, and above me now the doves crying, this voice heard throughout the land. So that's my love poem for Claire, who, by the way, if you've heard any weird sound, she's trying to get through the lock here because she usually is jumping on the bed at this time of day in my room. So, you know, I'm going to read another poem. I think you can, I hope you can hear me. I hear some noise a little bit in the back. So, but this is called The Bus Stop in Elmore in 1980. I had a series of really bad jobs. All right, for many, many years. You could call them bad, but I needed them and they fed me. So this one job I was fired from because the guards were all came down with flu. And I went out into the guardhouse to relieve them to do it. And but at any rate, I lost the job, and that's all you need to know. And I ran into somebody with a greater claim to sorrow than me. When someone tells you not to worry and doesn't offer eternal life or at least a good sandwich, know that they are just trying to get rid of you. In a nice way, of course. No doubt, because even with an arm squeeze, they'll do this. But most of the cheap forms of comfort in this life are paper napkins close to a raging fire. Poof, and up they go, over the roofs of the happier neighbors. Confronted with a brain tumor, a divorce, the death of 3 children, an unsightly wart, someone will invariably say, it'll all work out. Translation, go away. Or God never gives us more than we can bear, which means quit complaining. Or I'm sorry, which means you're on Facebook. If a person shows up juggling enchiladas and fireballs for your sake, or cleans your drain gutters and windows without being asked, or stays up all night with you as if on watch, then it's probably not someone you expected to come through. The apostles fled. The family had better things to do. The best friend was getting laid, someone you hardly thought of, or perhaps didn't even like much, came like Saint Raphael, the archangel, to walk the long journey with you. Forgive your friends. Remember, family is often limited, thank God. Apostles are supposed to betray us. Once, when I'd lost a bad job, but needed any kind of job, and was sitting at a bus stop, waiting for the number 57 to Kenilworth, New Jersey, feeling lower than whale shit, and we all know where that is. This old woman sat down beside me and asked me why I looked so sad. And when I told her, she said, life crushes us 100 times, and we are not pressed into wine. Don't believe those idiots. We are crushed. And she showed me the mark of the camp, not to compete, but to let me know there was something behind her words. And I said, forgive me. My troubles are so stupid and small compared to yours. And she said, oh no, honey, the world makes contests. The soul doesn't measure. And she kissed me on my forehead and gave me a chiclet. There is no moral to this story, except she was kind, like a broom sweeping leaves in a fierce wind. She was kind in the face of futility. She was one who had put God on trial for war crimes, had found God guilty, and then celebrated the Sabbath. She did not try to comfort me or say my pain was insignificant or promise there would be another job. She just sat with me until her bus arrived and swallowed her whole. And then there was only the sound of traffic and my sobbing. And I no longer knew why I sobbed or whether it was grief or shame or joy, but I was rocking like a man at the Wailing Wall. For all I know, I was praying, if that's what you want to call it. It was prayer, but at a place where praise and lamentation are both beside the point. My heart burned like a paper plate, and it ascended. It was winter, a dirty bus stop. And when the bus arrived, I put the change in reverently, slowly, and carefully, and stumbled to my seat. Met a lot of people when I used to take the buses. There's something to be missed when you finally have enough money to afford a car, but I'm not complaining. So I'm going to do one more. I think these poems are fairly long, so I'll do one more. I think I had this poem is called Poem, and this was written during the election. So these poems kind of go from 2017 back to 2016. And this is called Poem in Which I Shit on Unity. This is back when everybody was saying, let's be united, which we've all seen what happened with that. But it's, after the election. I don't want to come together. I don't even agree with myself. There's parts of me even now in outer Mongolia cursing over a cup of kumis, and other parts of me riding the back of a neutrino through There are those who want me born so that they can shoot me legally later when I deserve it. And I always deserve it. I am frost, I am fire, and all four winds pulling at the plastic crime scene. I am told today about a poem in which 3 pissed off plant workers in Michigan once beat a Chinese man to death, thinking him Japanese. This was long ago when Toyota was kicking America's ass. I wonder if they said, oops, or close enough. I wonder at this hatred. I wonder if the moon is the same for everyone just after, and nothing tilts or falls in grief. I hear voices in the background here, so I don't know who it is, but I'll read one more, and then
You have 10 minutes, Joe.
I have 10 minutes. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to read something from another book. I had 2 books come out this year because the books got logjam. This is called Helping the Village Idiot Feed the Chickens. It's an interesting title, picked by my editor. So this is called What We Need to Live. All right, and I'm going to read this poem because I believe you're never really dead if you get junk mail. And that's what this poem talks about. It talks about continuing my mother's life through junk mail. I still get junk mail from my ma, from the Maryknoll fathers, 41 years after her death. I always include them in any change of address. After all, no one who gets junk mail is ever really dead. I have my book bag from 4th grade filled with wrinkled homework and the first story I ever wrote, told by a narrator who admits at the end that he always lies when he's drunk, and he's drunk. If I am ever cremated, I want my ashes in that book bag, and screw the church who says sacred ground, which really means give us $10,000. The book bag is puce green. I used to belly flop on it to the ice of the Acme park. I fended off 6 older kids who thought I might have money by swinging it wildly, eyes clenched. So much has been lost in my life, to homelessness, to my own innate disarray. What I have managed to keep, if only as a story told sober, told with the full weight and knowledge of my being, is what keeps me alive, keeps me praying with my daughter Claire when she can't sleep, and Hail Mary full of grace becomes her lullaby. I want to show her her grandmother's name on the junk mail, the smiling Mary no fathers who haven't gotten a dime out of me in 41 years. Claire, Claire, Claire on the envelope, Claire in her bed, Claire which means light, but reminds me of clay and means earth to me, the ground where I take off my sandals, ground set apart, arc of my life, from Claire to Claire, from light to earth I'll go. No one knows what sacred ground is until they've stumbled on it. Grace for me has always been a kind of stumbling. What do I know of walking straight, except into walls? I am still swinging that book bag with all my might, eyes clenched, my body a gathering wind. I guess a lot of these are love poems and angry at the same time, right? You know, so I don't know. In Irish families, sometimes the only emotion you were really allowed, this isn't always true, but sometimes was anger, or after somebody wasn't in the room, you were allowed to praise them, but never when they were there. If I had won the Pulitzer Prize, my mother would have said, but your cousin Jimmy, he just won the spoon playing contest over at Flanagan's. So, you know, it was always don't get ahead of yourself. But I want to do one more poem, and I want to do one for my wife. And I got to find it in here. I know it's in here. And I'll look at my table of contents. All right. And it should be, it's called For After 10 Years. And this should take us out. We've been married 10 years now. And it should be somewhere in here. I had this book all marked, and then the markings fell out. So let me see. We'll find it. If I don't find it, don't worry. I won't take your time up by I'll read one smaller poem. Okay. Well, I'm not seeing it. I'm sure I'll see it right after this reading, but it wasn't here. So I'll do this one poem called Showing Up. Because I tell my students that showing up is one of the most important things you can do. You know, people don't realize that you gotta show. Okay, so I'll do this poem, Showing Up. Most of my jobs were the kind where you showed up and were willing to suffer. I was good at that. I was good at getting dirty and coming home so tired that once I fell asleep, my face crashing into a plate of spaghetti. My dad worked that hard too, and my mom. We'd place bets on whether they'd fall asleep watching the news. I don't know if I believe always in art or poetry. I believe in working. I don't want to wear a cape and have 3 names and have people think I'm some badass at a literary festival. I wanted to love someone so much my hands would bleed for them. My children are artistic, nonverbal. My daughter soils her sheets and I hold her close. Shit does not bother me. Sorrow does not bother me. I am afraid I will not be strong enough to resist wanting things that aren't real. Sorrow and shit are real. Showing up and being willing That's real. I clean her up, throw the dirty sheets in the laundry. At 3 a.m, the world, it's just you and whatever gods are missing. I stroke her forehead until she falls back to sleep. Later, I dream I am waiting in what they called the Union Hall for a day of labor. I wear my thermal under a red t-shirt. My work boots still have cement on them. I'm not chosen, and I spend the day shooting hoops with the other losers. I don't know how I got where I am in my life, except that I showed up. Professor, ditch digger, I showed up. I can feel the night turning into day. The objects reappear. My daughter's stuffed animals. My wife's head just an inch above the covers. Once my mother told me joy was different than happiness. Don't let anything take your joy, she said. I pray to her. I say, Ma, help me pull this rope. Help me not to lose my joy. My son comes running to hug me, his nose full of snot, which he rubs on my dress pants. I am crying. I am laughing. My hand is on his delicate skull. My lips touch his forehead. 4 kisses, Gabriel. 4 kisses. All 4 wins. Thank you.
That was wonderful, Joe. I think you have 3 minutes. So if you want to read one more poem, go ahead.
Okay, 3 minutes. I'll do a small one. I'll do a small atmospheric poem. I'll do this. This is a poem I wrote many years ago. Lady Clairol has lost her will to live. We all saw it coming. The stolid gaze, that strained look of cheap allegory around the eyes. She gathers bravery now into one last bright bouquet as the sun sets over the ruined postcard shop. Ah, lady, who could defy 1 hour, keep one flower from the arc of its decay? Men never understood you, mistress of Proteus as you were. Their hair changing hues, changing shades, in infinite flight from the groping of their astounded hands. Now, lady, may your roots weep black. May your hair grow all over this earth and refuse to be comforted. So I did that by memory. But that was for Lady Clairol, was for my mother, who every time she was bored, she would dye her hair. So I'd wake up and she'd be an ash blonde or a redhead. I never knew, what was going to happen with the Rice Krispies. Now,
Joe, I have to say to you that I love the way you use language, and it's so obvious how much you love poetry and how much poetry you've read and memorized. And it comes out in the way you're using language in your poems, not in a phony professorial way, but in an intrinsic way. And it makes your poems beautiful, moving, powerful, just amazing, amazing. You never cease to amaze me. I've known you 40 years, more than 40 years, I think.
Been a while. Yeah, I think we met in 1980 or something. It's been about 40, going 41 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's wonderful. I'm sure that everybody enjoyed your reading. I want to see where we are in the time. We have 1 minute. You have a 1 minute poem?
A 1 minute poem. Yeah, I can do a 1 minute poem. All right, here we go. Poem in this book, Compline, which is an evening prayer. It's the last prayer of the day. Come, touch this wind out of a vagrant longing that stands through the night in the house of the dawn. Lift up your chalice with worn, mumbled prayers and sing to ghosts. May the hour genuflect praise and deepen the dark river's gaze that holds the trees and houses accountable to whatever they shelter. It is this residue in things, this now that abides with us, that gives us bread to break. Compliment. I think I did.
Okay, and I don't know if the live stream is finished or not, but I do want to thank you for a wonderful workshop and a wonderful reading. And I hope the people who are watching this and listening to this in live stream understand what a privilege it is to hear you read and to recognize your poetic genius and your willingness to take enormous risks in your poems. I love that about you.
Thank you, Maria. And like I always say, you are the first and last workshop I took. So you're my teacher. And fairy godmother, because without you, I'd be at that bus stop.
No, you wouldn't be. You were destined to end up in a classroom.
Thank you, Maria. I think there's